sweet. So thank you, everybody, and thank you, Liz, for your very honest and wonderful talk. So I believe it was Kyung Ho that this story is about. I don't know if anyone here happens to remember the story that Liz was telling. But yeah, so when I hear stories like that, so this is a story about a Zen master about 120 years ago, and his attendant is carrying this heavy rice and is complaining about it. So the Zen master grabs a young woman and gives her a passionate kiss, and then they have to run because the villagers are chasing them. And of course, this was sexual assault. I mean, this was not a very correct thing to do from our mind, and it was not a correct thing to do, I'm sure, from the young woman's mind and her family's mind, and etc. That tells me two things. First of all, it tells me that anyone can be an asshole. Anyone can do something really wrong, and they're so caught up in their own ideas about what they're doing that they don't realize that they're wrong. Yeah, Zen Master Buddha probably did some really stupid things. Anybody can do that. And the second thing that tells me is that I'm probably doing something like that too. Not all the time, but there undoubtedly are times in my life when I have and when I will be doing things that are harmful and are not a good idea, and that I am completely unaware of because my culture doesn't tell me. My culture doesn't value the people being hurt, or my culture doesn't realize that this is a harm. I mean, 80, 90 years ago, it was common for parents to hit their kids. And, I was a kid on sort of as that was starting to disappear, but sometimes my dad would hit me because that's what he was supposed to do, given the situation. And now, I mean, at least in the circles that I believe most of us run in, that's just unheard of, So the recognition that we all make mistakes is not excusing anyone else from making mistakes. It's making us responsible for our own mistakes. In the Jewish prayer book on Yom Kippur, several times during the service, it's a very long service. In Orthodox synagogues, it literally goes on all day. In others, it's about 4 hours in the morning and then like 4 hours in the afternoon and early evening, maybe 2. You recite all these very specific sins that you've done, something about like stiff-necked pride and things like that. And then you have a thing about for the sins which I am not aware of, because we're not. And so rather than making excuses for these guys, it helps me see my responsibility in my own life and recognition of my own mistakes, my own errors, the suffering that I've caused others. If these guys were so clueless, I am certainly clueless. But not like, oh, I'm clueless, it doesn't matter, but more like, I better pay attention, So thank you, Liz, for bringing those things up. Yeah, thank you. Are there any questions? Yes.
What do you think about when a teacher uses a story, such as the rice bag story, that it's either named, like, and then the Zen master sexually assaulted this woman, kissed her, whatever, that's wrong, or what do you think about changing it? Like, how do you advise teachers or people reflecting on these stories to not get stuck in like, that's normal, that's okay?
Yeah, so how do we tell these stories, acknowledging the harm? I don't advise changing them, because if you change them, then you're pretending that these things don't happen. But I think it's up to everyone to see how they approach it. There's a story in the precepts that I often tell, or Stanley will tell, one of us will tell during the precept ceremony. You know, the demon story. So I'll tell this. Do bad things, but it's been very well trained, and so the master, to use a very awkward phrase, but very appropriate, so the master decides, I can trust this demon, and goes out, and for years it has not gone out without having the demon with him, because he wanted to supervise him. But then he goes out and spends the day out. And so the demon at first, it's a good little demon and does all the things it's supposed to do, and then gets hungry, and it sees the neighbor lady's chicken. So it steals the chicken, broke a precept, kills the chicken, and eats it, second precept broken. Then the neighbor lady comes looking for the chicken. I'm leaving something out here. Oh no, first the demon got drunk. That's the first precept it broke, was it got drunk. That's why it lost control. Saw the chicken, killed the chicken and ate it. Neighbor lady comes out, demon rapes the neighbor lady. Then the master comes home and says, what's going on? And the demon lies, so broke all 5 precepts. So that story is about the importance of breaking precepts, but you can tell it so that it's really funny. You can imitate the drunk demon. And then the demon saw the chicken and said, oh, that chicken. You can do that. And I used to do that. And then one day I suddenly realized, wait, this story is not funny at all. So how we relate to these stories, it's still an important story in a precept ceremony. It's a useful story because it says you break one precept and then all of a sudden they all start falling. You have to be really aware of what you're doing. You can't sort of lose it. You can't space out. It's an important story. And in that sense, it's a good story. But you have to acknowledge that it's not a funny story, although it can be told as a funny story. So that's personally how I deal with it, these things, is trying to not take on the mindset that says this is okay, that it's okay for Kyung-ho or whoever it was to grab this woman and kiss. You can tell that story, but not pretend that what he did was okay or clever. Oh, he's so clever, he got, like that. That's my approach. Everyone will have their own approach. But I think it's really important to acknowledge the errors of our ancestors. Because otherwise we create a world in which we think that they're perfect, they were not, and we think there's something wrong with us because we're not perfect, instead of understanding that they were not perfect, we are not perfect, you have to take this seriously, we all have to do better. I think that that's extremely important. So I don't want to hide these stories at all. I mean, there's all kinds of embarrassing things in the Torah. Oh my God, there are terrible things in the Torah, And I don't want, when I go to Jewish services, I don't want anyone to pretend they're not there. It's important to acknowledge, yeah, this stuff is there. Our ancestors did some really incorrect things and caused a lot of pain to a lot of people. And our job is to be better than them. And our job is also to understand that almost certainly we have, are, and will do things that are not correct, but we're not aware of it. I think that's extremely important. So that's my personal approach to it, and other people can have other approaches. But yeah, I don't think you do anyone any service by papering over things and pretending that they didn't happen. Okay? That's just me. All right?
I hear you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Are there, yes?
So if you've had a practice for a long time, you stuck with one for a long time, and then you decide to try a new practice, and you're used to the old one, so the new one maybe doesn't fit.
So I want to explain. So you've been doing a certain practice a long time. You
Right.
want to switch to another practice.
How long do you give the new practice before deciding whether it
Okay, because the old one doesn't fit, how long do you give the new practice? Up to you. More than 5 minutes.
No, but I mean, like, how many practices?
Yeah, how many yeah, it really is up to you. You know, I can't answer a question like that, but this is the rule. You know whether something fits or whether something doesn't fit. And yes, sometimes it's like, well, I'm not sure if it fits, so I'll wear it a while longer. There used to be this belief that if your new shoes didn't fit and you wore them, they don't. But there was this idea, so you'd keep wearing these shoes, and eventually, the leather, because there was always leather, would stretch out, and then, they would fit a little better. So you have to figure out what fits. Everybody's karma is different. So when you start a practice, whether it's your first practice, or whether you've been practicing a long time and you're switching practices, you can tell either this fits right now, or, I think this is going to fit. You can tell. And then if it doesn't fit, you don't do it. Okay? Yeah. Thank you. I do want to say that it's very important, because we have several new people here. It's very important to give a practice some time, not to bounce around from practice to practice to practice to practice. And especially within one sitting period, some people are like, well, I start with this practice and then I go to that practice. I think it's very important to keep a practice and to keep it for months or years, unless it really, it really doesn't fit and your mind is just bouncing all over the place. You really need to do something else. But because otherwise it's like you never get a center. You're just bouncing, 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 and your center never has a chance to get strong. So it's very important to stick to a practice, unless it's obviously really not fitting. I was almost going to say not working, but that's not a good word. But not fitting, yeah. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
So I wonder if you'd say something about what it means to trust in mind.
So what does it mean to trust in mind? So this is the title of a very famous long poem called the Xin Xin Ming, which is the third ancestor, so that would be about 7th century China, Sengcan. And there's a wonderful translation by Zen Master Bon Hae, Stan Lombardo, on our website, so you can read it for free. And so there's 2 questions there. What's trust and what's mind? And we only have about 2 minutes. So mind is a huge question in Buddhism. My mind, cosmic mind, I don't want to get into mind. But I do want to talk about trust. So trust is not an external thing, where I am over here, you are over there, I trust you. Trust is a relationship. Everything is a relationship, and not between 2 entities. That's what the class yesterday was about. Trust is when you put your foot down and the ground will be there to meet it. Not always. Sometimes you slip on pebbles or rain. I broke a hip that way, Sometimes there's an earthquake, whoops, the ground isn't there, it's moving. But it's that kind of relationship. Trust is your foot comes down and the ground is there. So that's what I want to say about trust. Okay? Thank you. And I guess we're out of time, so let's stop the recording.